be more than human. Hello and welcome back to the channel, all my fellow more than humans. My name is Joseph Carroll. I write under the pen name J.R. Carroll. And today we are here to talk about rage. Not that rage. The rage of dragons. Now, this is a book written by Evan Winter, and it was no pun intended, all the rage about 2 to 3 years ago on BookTube. It was like one of those BookTube darling books. Everybody was talking about it. Nobody had a bad thing to say about it. I even think I want to say that this book made somebody's list of 100 greatest fantasy books ever written. Now there's a bunch of these lists out there, so I don't know how reputable that is. And I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit dubious when a book's pretty new, and I believe it's had this title for a couple years. So the one thing I knew coming into this book is that this book, I believe, was originally self-published, and then I'm not sure how much success it had, but it had enough success that traditional publishers went to him and said, "Hey, let's make a deal." I don't know what kind of deal he got. I haven't looked into it, but must be pretty decent. I think it was I think they ended up giving him a 4-book deal. So they got that book and then 3 more to finish. So I guess it's going to be a 4-book story maybe. But yeah, I knew that because he did an interview with Daniel Green 2 years ago, and I remember when I first really got into BookTube, watching that and thinking, he's a pretty cool guy. I was just starting to get into my self-publishing journey, so some of the stuff was cool to get to listen to someone who's been really successful in the self-publishing world, and then decided to go on to the traditional. But other than that, I didn't know too much. All I knew was not very many people had anything bad to say about it. Now, in the past year, I've heard a few people say they just didn't like it or whatnot, but still overwhelmingly positive. So I was coming into it, I actually just threw this on to be a time gap until Waybound. But I was like, heard great things. Let's get into it. And I believe that Rage of Dragons, the name of the book, seemed to be more used as a marketing tool. Because there wasn't much dragons, or wasn't many dragons, or whatever you want to say. And they used the phrase "Raise of Dragons" in the book a couple times. Not hating on it. Smart move, Evan. Smart move. People love dragons. But it should have been called "The Rage of Tau." I believe that's how you say the main character's name. But before we really start diving into this, I like the book. So, I'm going to have some positive and some negatives to this book. So, just getting it out into the ether there, I'd like this book. So, there's 3 parts. There's 3 stories inside of this book. There's a romance, there's a revenge plot, and then there's a imminent danger to society, a war oncoming plot. And I actually liked all three storylines. I am assuming the war one is going to be more in the second book. But I liked the he's a younger guy, so of course it's more of that typical teenage young adult romance feel to it. But Evan, writes it really well, and that's another positive I would say. Evan's writing is on point. Now I don't know if the version I got was any different than the original version. I don't know if they polished it up more when he went traditional, but yeah, it's very on point writing. At no point did I think that I was like getting pulled out of the story through the writing. Now, the other plot, the revenge plot, is the main pusher of this story, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty good. You really hate the person that he's going after. So, and you really can understand. You can understand his motives, which I really like. I like that straight. Like, okay, I get where we're going. You're not trying to throw me off here. I know what we're doing. Aspect to the plot, and so in this world, there's a big caste system. There's the lessers. There's like there's like layers of like the lessers, and there's like the greater lessers, and then there's like noble, highborn, all this. But one thing that did take me out of the story, and a negative to this, is, man, I don't know if I've ever heard the word noble so many times in a book. I don't know if I've ever heard the word commoner or lesser so many times in a book. Like I don't think that there is a single paragraph. I would love to like actually break it down. How many actual paragraphs in this book didn't have the word noble or lesser or commoner in a single? I mean, it's just pounding on you. Like, okay, we get it. There's a caste system. We get it. The nobles suck. Like, we get it. They're beating the commoners down. They think they're better. We get it. Like, you don't, like, that's the one thing that did pull me out a couple times, where it became so much that, like, I laughed a couple times. I was just like, oh my god, like, bro, you just said that like 5 times. You said that you said the word noble, commoner, lesser like 5 times in a 40-second, like, a 40-second read, or on one page. So that took me out of it a little bit. And I'm just like, we get it. You're working some kind of like class system, systemic thing into it. I'm it's okay, man. You could pull it down a little bit. Maybe he pulls it down in the second book. I don't know. Then I did like, one thing I really liked is how he used like injuries and little things that actually made a difference, and made it make sense for his character. Character got hurt early on and had to use his offhand, and became really good with his offhand, which led to him using 2 swords at one point. And that's what he became known for. And it was because he got injured earlier and trained solely with the left hand for the longest time. And he was, you could almost call this a progression fantasy inside of one book, because it was a lot. And one thing people said that was kind of on the negative side is the repetitiveness of, he wakes up, he trains, they go into a skirmish, and they do that over and over and over again. I actually thought that was a positive. I normally don't like the training school thing. But Evan does it really well here, and I thought that was enjoyable to see his progression of him getting better. And there was almost like an anime trope in this, which helped him accelerate his skill level above everybody else. I don't want to give it away, but I seen it coming, but it was still really cool. One of the other things that people, one of the few negative things anyone ever says, I totally agree with, and it's the fact that like everyone is described, especially everybody he goes up against, everybody's bigger, everybody's stronger, everybody has bigger reach, bigger swords, and it's like, and there's nothing wrong with him just being a smaller person than everyone else because they're highborns or whatever. But man, he really lets you know every single time, and there are ways to do that better than the way he really smacks you with it every single time, letting you know he is the underdog. Even though he gets super good at before the end of the book. But yeah, I mean, overall, I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to go on to the second book, and so I'll be waiting, with everybody else waiting for the third book. But yeah, let me know. Let me know. Have you read this book? Were you an early adopter? Were you there when he was an indie author, or did you come along later like I did? And if you made it this far, make sure you subscribe, and if you want to know more about my writing and have some really cool perks, check out my Patreon. I think it's a little bit different than most people's. And remember, be more than human.